Activity Policy Committee. I'm going to outline the emergency evacuation procedure, which is in the event of the fire alarm sounding, it's not due to go off, then please leave the room calmly via the lobby area, out the main door of the City Hall, turn right, walk down the ramp towards the cathedral, and the assembly point is in front of the cathedral. I'd particularly like to welcome the public who are attending in the chamber, and anyone who's watching the webcast at home, work, or at play. We do ask that the council chamber is a place where we have an exchange of views, and whilst they can be frank, we ask that everyone speaks with courtesy and respect. I'm going to welcome the members of the committee and ask them to introduce themselves. So my name's Councillor Ed Plowden, and I'm the chair of the committee. And should we just let you self-organise as to who... you could go first, Tom, and just all introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Renhard, Horfield Ward Labour, and I'm here substitute for Councillor Tim Rippington today.
Councillor Don Alexander, Avonmouth and Lawrence Western Ward.
Councillor Kaz Self, Southmead Ward.
Nicholas Coombs, Westbury and Henleys.
Councillor David Wilcox from Lockleys Ward.
Councillor Emma Edwards, Bishopston and Ashley Down Ward.
Rod Breyer, Councillor for St George West. Councillor Graham Morris, Stockwood Ward.
Okay, we've got apologies from Councillor Tim Rippington, and we've got Tom as a substitute. We've also got John Smith, who normally sits on this chair, on leave. So we've got Alex Hearn here today, ably supporting me, Director of Economy of Place. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to declare in relation to any items of business on the agenda? I'll take that as a no. Minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 15th of May are accepted as a correct record, and would anyone like to second that? Rob. Are you content to confirm the minutes as a correct record to be signed by me as the chair? I'm taking that as a yes. No amendments to the minutes. I've got a few quick announcements from the chair, agenda item 5. We've got a forward plan. It was last published on the 11th of June. The next forward plan will be published on the 12th, around about the 12th of August. And I make no apologise that there's going to be quite a lot of movement between last forward plan and the next forward plan. So there's a number of things that are being, a couple of things are being brought forward and a few things are being pushed back. As far as I'm concerned, it's extremely important that people should know what the transport team are working on, even if they're going to be delayed. So I'd rather that people have full visibility and sight of what's being worked on, and that we're very forgiving if we can't make the timetable. There's sometimes quite tight timetables we've set for ourselves. So there will be some movement on that plan. There's been quite a lot of concern that the South Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood consultation engagement report was, initial engagement report was not published, but that's been published at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So that's there for everyone to see. And as ever, there's been a number of officer decision notices published between the last committee and this committee. There's one in particular that I thought I'd draw people's attention to, which is a 288 million contract for the next 4 years for basically highways works. So that's everything from doing all the works that we're pushing through this committee to change the way the city moves about, as well as all the things we do to make sure that the city can continue to move around and doesn't fall into the river. So that's a particularly big one, which I thought I'd particularly identify for everyone here today, and that has the up to 4 years extension, I think, on it as well. So, and one of the things, because that's broken down into something like 12 or 13 lots, 10 lots now, so the lots are reduced, but at some point we're going to invite the committee for a briefing for an hour or so, just to understand exactly how those lots work, because I think it's worth everyone knowing that. David.
Can I suggest a tour, Chair?
A what?
A tour of the works going on and looking at them.
I'm particularly looking at Sean because he took some of us on a tour of a lot of bridges which have a lot of people in orange uniforms on at the moment. Just quite recently. It'd be really interesting to go and look at some of those bridges again, maybe.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to arrange a tour for the committee. If someone could help me with some dates. Sam, I'll look to you. But if, yeah, more than happy to take councillors around to look at some of the work we're doing, especially things like Vauxhall Bridge. Because as Ed would have seen, it's almost complete replacement with the sheer volume of work we've had to do in a very methodical way, if you see what I mean. So it'd be good to show it off.
I suggest leave it till September so they don't get sunburn.
We might also want to look at one or two completed projects to sort of learn any lessons about seeing them on paper and actually then seeing them in stone. And I know that Overton Road and Princess Victoria Street are both heading towards completion, so it'd be good to do that. Nick?
Thank you. We're renewing and letting a few contracts tonight of about the 10 million range. Was there a reason why the 288 million contract wasn't able to come to a committee?
Because it was approved, I believe, by Cabinet just before the committee system came into effect, and it's taken over a year to procure that. So there wasn't any decision really to be made. Sean, do you want to?
Yeah, a large contract like that takes at least 18 months to bring. One of the first steps we have to do is get permission to do it in the first place. So that's why the framework had to be agreed well before the committee system come in, and then we've been working on it. But we've obviously took lessons learned from the previous contracts to install into this one.
I think when we go through that presentation, it'd be worth just highlighting some of the things that we've improved in our favour to make those contracts work better for us. Okay, let's move on to the public forum. In this committee, I always try and do the statements first to then allow maximum time for questions. Can anyone who's made a statement and is here and wants to make that statement, could you just put up your hand now so we've got an idea? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. As you, I hope, are aware, we do ask that you don't read your entire statement out unless you can do it in a minute, but normally we try and make limit statements to 1 minute. You should have received that when it was confirmed that your statement has been accepted. And so we just ask you to do everything you can to keep your statements to a minute and summarise the main points rather than reading out the entire thing, if that's possible. So I'm going to go through in order. The first statement is from Stuart Redpath and Greg Cooper. Are you here? Just before you start, and before I start any timer, I'm just going to clarify that there was a list of names on... you were supported by a large number of people in your street. There was a list of names that you supplied, which hasn't made it into the public domain because of privacy reasons, but all of the members will have seen that list of names. Okay, so just wanted to clarify that for you. So if you want to start your minute, please get going now.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so since the rollout, I'll read it out for clarity. Since the rollout of the RPS in 2018 and the extra restrictions introduced on Downs parking, parking in Cossins Road, so I'm talking on behalf of the residents of Cossins Road, has doubled. Our road is now parked to capacity every weekday, with pavement parking along both sides. As a result, the road is narrowed, so it can only accommodate one car at a time passing through Cossins Road. Large vehicles are regularly unable to navigate the road, and obviously that's of concern with emergency vehicles. The road is a major pedestrian route and is a bit of a superhighway for Redland Green School and Westbury Park Junior School. And it's literally used by hundreds of children every day. There's also a church on the school and on Cossins Road, and also a nursery, a large nursery school as well. So it gets very, very busy. It means
just coming up to a minute.
Okay, so
you could
it basically
summarise key points.
So basically, we'd be interested in any extensions to RPS to have a closer look at Cossins Road, particularly because it is a bit of a special case.
I think a number of your neighbours wrote to me personally, and I think I hope I've managed to reply to you all, and you make a very strong case. I must say that there's a number of other roads that have written to me since that report went through, all on the edge, very much on the edge of existing RPZs, and it's quite a common issue. So definitely very strong in our thinking when we come to decide where we're going to do it. And as I hope I've made clear, that I'm not convinced that we're going to be able to satisfy all the demands for RPS in the next sort of 18 months or 2 years. So, but we will, of course, do our best. Next, Susan Hughes. Not here. Melissa, I can't see Melissa here. Meg Smith.
Thank you. So as a South Bristol resident who commutes daily into the East Bristol livable neighbourhood area, I just really want to know when that area is going to be properly presented and evaluated. The scheme has consistently been described as a trial with a view to making it permanent, but as a member of the public, I still have got no clear understanding of what specific outcomes the trial is trying to achieve. So what metrics or thresholds will be used to decide whether it succeeded or failed? And what will happen if the data shows that it isn't working? And most importantly, whether removal or reversal is a real option or whether permanence is already assumed. So if this is a genuine trial, then these things should be made clear to the public by the end of the process and not afterwards. Otherwise, trial becomes a word that's used to soothe dissent rather than reflect any real possibility of change. So I know that some monitoring is taking place, but without published baselines, defined benchmarks or transparent decision-making processes, the public cannot meaningfully understand the outcome or trust that concerns will be taken seriously. So I ask the committee to urgently clarify what the scheme is being measured against, who decides what success looks like, and whether the possibility of cancelling or amending the scheme still exists. And this is a request for basic democratic transparency in how such a major change to how we live, move and connect is being handled. This is particularly important given that similar livable neighbourhoods in the south are gathering momentum before the East Bristol scheme has been fully evaluated. Thank you.
Thanks. We didn't receive that as a question, so we haven't actually prepared answers to those questions, but I can assure you that we are working on a plan that we will be announcing in due course. So I'm going to move on. Dave Redgewell. Dave, if I could remind you to try and keep it to a minute, please. That would be great. Thank you.
So my questions and my statements are similarly about the issue about where WECA ends and where Bristol begins on bus stops and infrastructure. As you were at the bus advisory board with me, the panel. We still have situations in the Haymarket where I cannot get on and off a bus. I witnessed one today, I'll show you a photograph, when the number 9's on the stand and the number 8 rail link comes in behind, it cannot set down because nobody's looked at how those buses go down from a wheelchair's point of view. So we have a similar situation in Brislington, where Alan Peters asked me to raise the fact there is still no bus stops in Allison Road, yet the service, thank you very much everybody, 36 runs across to South Bristol, but can't stop in the Bromwell area because no flags have been put in. I don't know if that's WEC's responsibility or Bristol's responsibility. And then my final request is, we haven't done this in Avon, but Ed, if we could borrow some wheelchairs and give Adam and the team a wheelchair for a day, and some of the committee members a wheelchair for the day to go out and see exactly what it's like, and I'm saying the same to Helen Goodwin, then you might get an idea of what it's like to live in a wheelchair and try and use the city's public transport network. And that's the challenge. So I've asked that question. I hope that I'm asking it to all 4 unitary authorities and the Mayor, because that way you'll understand what it's like living in a wheelchair and being confined to use a wheelchair in the city region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Nick Davis.
Can you hear me? Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah. My statement was on the CRSTS route on the Portway. I won't run through it, but essentially it was a critique of the consultation process, which was deeply flawed. We at the Cycle Campaign were promised engagement and meetings which did not take place. There was misleading information at the consultations as to the width of the shared use cycling and walking footway, and there were many other defects, such as are similar to those which occurred in the West Dulwich against Lambeth case, including the failure to respond to emails and the failure to respond to very detailed, well-argued, well-thought-out documents completely. In one of my questions, I asked essentially for the council to defend its process and say why we shouldn't apply for judicial review given these very obvious flaws. And I just received a generic answer that our consultations are generally very good, which they are. You usually are very good at it. But the Portway wasn't. So are you prepared to defend it?
I'll wrap that one up. Thank you, Nick. And you've got questions later, I think. Tony Scott? No. Brendan Taylor?
Thank you, Adam. I will keep this short and sweet. As someone who's an everyday user of public transport and has a lot to do with First West of England internally, as I know a lot of managers, I am disgusted at the bus service we are receiving lately. Twice in a week, my last bus hadn't turned up. Once because the bus broke down, and the second time because there was a road closure and I got told to go to the BRI and the bus didn't turn up. It was the last bus of the night and I live on the service 3 in Sea Mills. I therefore had to get a bus to the Cribs Causeway where the bus driver had to take me out of service, putting his own job at risk because I cannot fit in a wheelchair taxi very well. My question to you is, Councillor Adam, what do we do if a wheelchair user gets stuck late at night on a Saturday or Sunday night and there's no one in radio room to call? And I also put it forward to you that we need more night buses. Night buses are essential for getting vulnerable people home safe. We saw that with the X14, which is funded by North Somerset County Council. We need more night buses for the city because before 2020 there was about 11 night bus routes, but since COVID they have dropped dramatically. What is your solution to this?
Thank you, Brendan. We are putting on some additional night buses thanks to the Clean Air Zone funding. Those are mostly going to be on Friday and Saturday night. I think there's other people here who may not be on the list but want to speak. So, okay, Sue Sage.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm speaking as well. The same thing with the buses are being cancelled, and I am left behind. And I'm talking for other people as well. It's happening rather a lot. Everyone needs to get home safe. You can't see somebody with disability, but it's happening a lot. I haven't got the money for the taxi, and I'm left behind for 50 minutes, and it's happening a lot. And I'm speaking for other people as well.
Okay, thanks, Sue. I think under the bus deal charter we've got that people, if the last bus doesn't turn up, then there is the chance to take a taxi and get reimbursed by first bus. But I appreciate that's a lot of money for people to shell out before they get reimbursed. So Matt, hi again, Matt. You've got a minute to speak, and then I think you've got questions as well.
Last year, the Cumberland Road bus gate issued over 61,000 penalty charge notices, which is more than any other in the entire country. Meanwhile, I've brought the committee's attention to countless deviations from the official guidance in the DFT traffic signs manual and also from the mandatory requirements of the traffic signs regulations and general directions. All this evidence has been disregarded, and the council has continued enforcement without making any improvements whatsoever. It may be that many of these issues were due to genuine mistakes by the designers and project managers involved. Once these failures became apparent, many of the issues could have been successfully addressed at an early stage, but all parties refused to admit to any mistakes and preferred to allow tens of thousands of drivers to be prosecuted. Genuine errors can be forgiven if they are acknowledged and corrected. That has not happened here. That is unforgivable.
Well done, Matt. Well within the minute. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who is here to make a statement before we move on to questions? No. Thank you all for your statements. I'm going to move on to the questions now. I believe the first one is the Bristol Cycling Campaign, which I don't know if that's you, Nick, or somebody else. Right. Yes, particularly as it comes from the Bristol Cycling Campaign, and you're one of the members there, Nick. So yes, that's about parking enforcement on Park Road.
Yeah, obviously we have concerns that people have been parking between the wide ones. We understand why there need to be wide ones. We take your point about overturning the rule Eric Pickles made about camera enforcement. That's a national issue which the Bristol Cycling Campaign will support other national cycling bodies and living streets and so forth in trying to change, and we hope the government may change it. But in the meanwhile, the problem exists. It's not going to be some years, even if there is legislative change. Can we have some more enforcement, please?
I'm going to ask Sean Taylor, Head of Highways, to answer that.
Yeah, enforcement is very difficult in all areas because we do try, obviously we've only got a limited resource to do the whole city, and we do concentrate on the areas like the strategic routes into the city, rush hour and things of that nature. However, we did bring a motion last year to employ more CEOs, which we're in the process of undertaking to try and up our enforcement capability. However, I will say it is a very difficult role to employ into because, as I'm sure you can imagine, it's quite a difficult role to undertake, and it's a sort of we struggle to recruit into those roles, but we do endeavour to up our enforcement capability.
And just to add to that, one of the proposals I brought to the budget and was approved was to actually increase the number of CEOs, and I think there's but there's that's underway, and investment has been put into kind of resources to make sure we can accommodate the extra staff. Thank you. Next is Nick Davis. So you had a number of questions, I think 3 questions about the Portway. You've got answers which I think from your statement you're not particularly satisfied with.
Well, there are some minor improvements for which, thank you very much, Chair. And it does seem bizarre that we had to fight so hard just to get toucans on a cycle route, and why those weren't designed in from the outset seems extraordinary. Obviously, construction drawings have not been prepared, are being prepared at the moment. My first supplementary question is, can we feed into that process? The answer mentions drop curbs, and these maybe drop curbs will work in some places, but they can also expose cyclists to danger moving on and off the road. So they do need to be carefully designed. The designers do need to have attention to LTN 120, even if this is going to be a bit of a fudge rather than a proper cycle route in accordance with government guidance. And
so is there a question, please, Nick?
Yeah, the question is, can we be involved in the changes to those designs which weren't in the May 2024 designs which we've seen, and also on the around the trees at Sylvan Way, where there's about 500 or 600 meters of the shared use path, where it's down to about 1.5, 1.6 meters, barely suitable for a pavement, let alone for a shared use path, and at least cut back the verge between the trees. I mean, you know, there's hatching on the road, there's masses of road space you could have used, but at least makes some effort to improve it. So can we be involved in that process?
I think Toby, the project manager, has offered to have some sort of dialogue, is he?
Well, I think that the work has been done. I think we're about to go out to tender. So we've incorporated the drop curbs as discussed previously and as requested. So my understanding is we're about to go out to tender on it. And we can provide latest drawings, I'm sure.
You will provide the latest drawings immediately, then?
If I can ask the team to send the latest drawings that we've got, yeah. I don't have an
If
issue with
not
that.
this evening, then tomorrow?
Well, it won't be this evening, no.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be this evening, Nick.
And we will have the opportunity to feed back into them and...
They're drawings that are going out to tender, so we can send you what we've drawn up here.
And surely, you know, things like cutting back the verge and putting in tarmac between the trees, which for some reason you haven't done, I don't know why. But at least that could be done to make some minor improvements.
I think we're just going to have to put that in the hands of the project manager, Nick, so because they're now on a bit of a tight timeline. I think that was 2 supplementary questions, but so can we move on? Next, Matt.
Okay. One of my questions was about, I asked about yellow backing boards at bus gates, and they've been put in all the other bus gates, but not Cumberland Road. And there was an officer response which said about difficulties with utilities and the pavement affecting size of signs, things like that. At full council on Tuesday, Transport Chair confirmed that signage for the East Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood bus gates were enlarged from the original specification to comply with DFT guidance, but he twice read out a statement saying Cumberland Road has site-specific engineering and road safety constraints that have been explained previously, which prohibit the installation of larger signs. So now, I've been paying quite close attention to this subject for more than a year, and I'm only aware of one instance when a site-specific engineering constraint has been explained, and that's the one about the congested utilities and the pavement beside the bus gate, making it difficult to use a foundation of the normal depth, so perhaps limiting the size of a sign on that pole. I'm not aware of any other site-specific engineering and road safety constraints ever being explained in relation to any of the other signage, but maybe I've missed something somewhere. But
so is there? This is question.
Yeah, this is the bus gate signage for Cumberland Road, and by my reckoning, there are 18 signs that are smaller than the recommended sizes in the traffic signs manual, and smaller also than the smaller option when there are site difficulties. So my question is, can whoever gave Ed that text to read out on Tuesday please explain for each of these 18 signs what the site-specific constraints they're referring to, and when they were explained, and to whom they were explained, because I don't remember any of that.
I'm not sure that's something that we can do right now. And I don't think that's the best.
I'd just say what we've cited in previous responses is that the design of the bus gates is based on site-specific requirements, and quite often those may not be obvious to people and do relate to underground services, narrowness of footway, etc. And we've made that generic point several times in these sessions.
I actually think there was a specific answer that was about the intervisibility of people travelling westbound, and that if we had used the correct signage, that would have actually affected the visibility of the junction.
Well, we have used the correct signage. It's just the added addition of yellow backing boards would have reduced the visibility even further for people exiting from Gasferry Road as people are coming through that route, coming, shall we say, eastbound but southbound. So the decision was made that due to the intervisibility, it was best to keep the signs to the size, and also the size of the island. If you increase the size of the sign, we would have to increase the size of the island and further narrow lanes.
Which leads to a road maintenance issue, because you start getting all the tyres in the same place. Matt, I think some of the 18 signs that you refer to are probably advisory signs rather than mandatory signs that would be required by the traffic penalty tribunal.
It's not about whether it's mandatory or not. If it's on the road, it's supposed to follow the guidance in the traffic signs manual.
And I think the other thing that we mentioned is that the traffic signs manual does say that it's guidance and it should be followed, but not slavishly. And the site-specific issues are more of concern. I'm hearing a second question coming, so I'll let you go.
No, I'll give a copy to pass on so you can see which ones I'm talking about. But the response claimed that the site-specific engineering road safety constraints had been explained, and they hadn't. Just a generic explanation that there were some site-specific restraints, but no one's ever said what they are. So that could mean anything, couldn't it? So that's my supplementary question, and I'll be happy for a written reply like you did with the other one. So if you can't answer it now. And the visibility thing that you were just saying about is complete nonsense, because the signs are above eye level, so you can easily see underneath the sign on the traffic island, and it doesn't block your view of anything. Even if it was bigger, it would only block your view of a tree. So, and I said that in my response to the yellow sign question, so I don't know why you're saying it again now. So, shall I do the second one anyway? Okay. My first question was pointing out how the bus gate was the highest grossing one in the country. The statutory guidance of the Traffic Management Act says hotspots with high non-compliance suggest that signage and layout should be revised or at least reviewed. And so at the end, I asked the question, if the council insists that the signage and layout are all correct, then why did those people drive through the bus gate? Why did 60,000 people go through the bus gate if the signage is correct? Or at least, what are the council's theories if they don't accept that the signage is wrong? And officers only said, unfortunately, officers cannot speculate on why drivers contravene bus gate restrictions, which is fair enough. I was hoping you could use your expertise and decades of experience to offer some kind of explanation or theory, but is that not forthcoming? That's not my supplementary question, that's just a request for the original question to be answered. No? Okay. So a supplementary question then is the one that I asked at full council that somehow went missing and got mixed up. So in numerous press releases, the council claims the signage installed surrounding the bus gate is compliant with the latest guidance and legislation from the Department for Transport. The latest guidance is the traffic signs manual. So do you still stand by that? Is the bus gate signage compliant with the latest guidance from the Department for Transport? Yes or no?
I think we've answered that a number of times. That we believe it is. It's guidance, and it has to be adapted to the on-site requirements.
So I think the answer is yes, and that's something that we've chosen to defend in the Traffic Penalty Tribunal. And I think if you look at the number that we've won compared to the number we've lost and not contested, we're still some way ahead.
The Traffic Penalty Tribunal doesn't judge whether signs are compliant with the DFT specifications. It only judges the enforceability of the bus gate. It doesn't look at all the other signage and whether it complies. So, but anyway, so the answer is yes, the council believes it has complied with all the latest guidance from the DFT, yes?
I think if you take it as guidance, yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. Next is Dave Ridgewell. You've had your answers. Dave, did you have any supplementary questions?
Yes, I do.
And can we...
the first one.
We've got about 5 minutes left of the public forum, so if we could try and make them into quite quick, snappy questions, Dave.
I am concerned that First Group is able to design bus stops in the city centre. Actual fact, I thought the Highway Authority is Bristol, and legally they're responsible for the bus stop allocations, along with the Westfield Combined Authority and the Mayor. My concern is that bus stop you've described in your report back to me actually isn't like that at all. Part of that bus stop's actually closed and only one stand is in use. If the number 9 sits on that stand, my number 8 cannot get in and put me back onto the side of the road. I possibly get onto the edge of the carriageway. That needs looking at, and I'm very concerned. So my question is, will the council go back and look at these things properly as the local transport authority and highway authority and not rely on the views of a private company, a PLC, to dictate where buses go in Bristol city centre or Stagecoach? I mean, which PLC you like? You're the transport authority. You take control of the situation, please.
Yeah, sure. We'll send someone out to have a look.
You've got one more supplementary if you want, Dave.
Yeah. So obviously you know how dear to my heart and your heart Hembury Station is. I know you've ducked it back to Wecker, but the mayor may be great, but we need to get that station open. So all I'm asking, the Bristol City Council and South Gloucestershire, can somebody sort out the access and the planning permission? Because at the moment that station is stopped and no work's going on. So I know you can all pass it, but Ed, please try and push it forward. That's all I'm asking, all of you. Just get that station open and built, whether it's you, South Gloucestershire or Wecker, I don't mind. Just collaborate and get it open. We got the government money and that was hard work.
We've been briefed today by Wecker in the City Council, and they are expediting it as fast as they can. As you know, anything to do with the railway takes time, Dave. Next up is Nick Coombs. Nick, I'm just going to remind you that as a councillor in general, and particularly as a member of this committee, I appreciate you might actually want this on public record, which is why you've done it, but you're more than welcome to ask any questions like this if you want privately, and we'll make sure you get an answer. I can, if you want doing this specifically to get it on the public record, then accept that. So you've had an answer. Did you have a supplementary question, Nick?
No, I ticked the box to say that I wouldn't be coming to the meeting to make sure that we didn't waste time, because I am entitled to answer questions anyway.
I don't think we noticed that, and we didn't note any apologies. So okay, thank you, Nick. Next is Sue Sage. So you've got 2 extra questions if you want them, Sue.
Yes, just to say that I use the Stagecoach bus to go to Southmead. It's very good service, but if first broke down, I'd be left abandoned. The Stagecoach would give me, with terms and conditions, they would give me a taxi.
Was that a question?
Yeah.
The bus charter states that if I think if it's unable to fulfil a journey, then they will recompense any reasonable journey, alternative journey that's been taken. That does mean that you have to shell out and get the receipt back, which may be difficult for some people, I accept.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
I'm talking about for myself and others. Very difficult. Yes. You need to get home safe.
In terms of the charter, that's what the charter says. I can't speak for First Bus if they fail to do their commercial operation. I don't know if you want to add to that, Adam.
If Stagecoach take a different approach, then we can certainly raise it and see if First would move on that.
So we'll take that away for you, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who wanted to ask a question? Okay, if we can make it quite quick, because we've got only a couple of minutes left, and then we're going to move on to the rest of the agenda.
Sorry, this will be really quick. In regards to the 3 night buses, the one question I have is, do we know what routes they are? And if we do, can we announce it in this meeting? And the other question I have is in regards to what Caesar said, if the last bus is cancelled with regards to First Bus, can First Bus send us out a taxi like Stagecoach do, because we can't always afford to pay for it and get the money back, and people like me and Sue could not send in emails and send in receipts because we struggle to type emails.
So I think we've agreed that we're going to go and have a discussion with First. I'm going to make sure that happens. and try and improve it so that they're not expecting people to be recompensed. As the first question, I'm not quite sure, but the registration, I think, is going to come any day now, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be very soon, and we will then announce the additional services that are being provided.
So how long would you say before it's put up on the website?
It's already overdue, so working very hard to get that sorted because WECA haven't managed to get it done as quickly as they should have done.
Because from my understanding, it's now going to have to be put out as an emergency tender.
The tenders has happened, the contracts have been signed, I believe, so it's just a question of getting that registration out. So that should happen really quite quickly now.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you all members of the public for taking the time and trouble to come in and ask questions and make statements and participate in the process, even if some of you are not entirely satisfied with the answers you've got, and I'm sorry for any disappointment on that front. Right, let's move on now. We are moving on to agenda item 7. Sorry? Nick.
I know we don't have this slot on the agenda, sort of reflections on the public statements, but maybe we should. All important issues raised, which I'm sure we all are all reflecting on. 2, I think, have come back enough times that we should ask ourselves, is this going to be on an agenda soon? And one of those is the sort of success criteria for the Livable Neighbourhoods trial, and you've said that that's on the way, so that'd be good to get that as an action. And the second is finding out what does settling down mean in terms of the Cumberland Busgate compliance levels, and have we reached a level that we consider to be acceptable in public policy terms of delivering our objectives there?
I'm happy to take those 2 challenges away, and we will, on the East Bristol Livable Neighbourhood, we're trying to do more than was originally planned, so we're just trying to get that lined up in a timeline, given that everything's been delayed. So that's been something that's been... I'm also working with WECA because the Metro Mayor said that she wanted to review livable neighbourhoods, so we are dealing with a number of moving parts. On Cumberland Road Busgate, I think maybe we are reviewing the signage, aren't we, and with a view to making it permanent and learning some of the lessons. And so that's something that maybe we could send round to committee members and to Matt with the designs that we're coming up with for permanence when they're ready.
Yeah, we're actually in the process of making some of those changes. The information signs changing to permanent signs, because that's what you would do, is you review the sign-in, which is up there temporary to help enforce the Busgate. So we're in the process of undertaking that, and the enforcement is now dropped considerably and is in line with other Busgates within the city.
We did have one blip in March when there was overnight closures of the Plimsoll Bridge, which I think maybe affected a few people. And if you could send the designs out, then as you're a resident in my ward, Matt, I'm more than happy to pass those on. Thank you, Matt. Noted. Right, let's move on. Thank you, Nick. I think that's a good intervention. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 7. So this is about electric vehicle cross-pavement charging policy review. And the purpose of the report is to highlight the key policy implications of permitting the rollout of cross-pavement electric vehicle charging, and recommends a trial be developed and delivered in the Bristol area. The findings of the trial will inform an updated policy on the use of this technology. This is something that I've been very keen, given the amount of correspondence that I've had in my own personal mailbox, to do something about, because I think if we're going to move to a situation where we've got, I think it was 13,000 chargers we're going to need across the city in the next few years, the private investment has absolutely got to be part of the mix alongside the public investment that we're making and rolling out at some pace, but possibly, arguably not as fast as we would necessarily need to be. The 2 things that I am going to ask, just to kick this off, is firstly that whatever work we do, given that this will require planning permission, I think we need to have a set of criteria that are so obvious that anyone can determine for themselves whether or not their planning application is going to be successful. because what I don't want to do is for people to, in good faith, pay a fairly significant fee. For example, if you want to turn your garden into a drive, a fairly significant fee, only to be told no, and it's a non-refundable fee. So I would wish that the criteria should be as clear as possible for anyone looking at this, so that they can judge it for themselves. The other thing I'm going to ask, and this came directly from the Disabled People's Advisory Group, which met on Tuesday, is whether or not we can, I'm going to ask officers to consider whether or not we can consider disabled people a priority. So if you've got a blue badge, an existing disabled parking bay, or you're getting your car from the Motability scheme, then by definition you can't walk very far. And I will be asking officers to consider, and I'm sorry this didn't make the paper, but it shows the value of the Disabled Advisory Group, to consider whether or not we can make, we can make disabled people a priority as part of running a waiting list, and particularly if we're going to do that on a first-come, first-served basis. So that's my introduction. I don't know if anyone wants to make comment on this. Oh yes, Adam, sorry, did you want to, I'm going to invite Adam, sorry I'm not following my script, City Transport Officer, to introduce and outline the key features of the report, which I'm going to assume that everyone's read, so don't feel the need to take us through the whole thing.
Yeah, so this is largely about cross-pavement charging options. The paper sets out some of the kind of background, and then also sets out the potential benefits and disbenefits. Obviously, benefits from a user perspective for the cheaper energy you can, and then the kind of more certainty of access around charging, and for councils might reduce the amount of investment that we need to make. But there are also potential disbenefits as well in terms of implementing this infrastructure, is all set out in the paper. The recommended approach that we've put in the paper is looking at different things. So the ownership model, we would suggest a local authority owned model. So there would be an application, we would then implement the infrastructure, whatever that would be, a curb charge or whatever they're called, and we would then manage that going forwards. The owner would be responsible for the cable that they put in it, we'll be responsible for the actual piece of infrastructure. That was rather than third party owned. Planning permission will cover and liability, and then the scale of the trial. So we're suggesting a review at gateways of 100, 250 and 500 applicants. That's rather than setting any particular cap on the trial. We want to give flexibility to enable ourselves to extend the trial if needed. And then prioritisation, taking on board the point just made, it would be on a first come, first served basis. We could certainly integrate into that to prioritise disabled applications as part of that. That's rather than things like an area-based limited trial or based on trying to assess where there's existing charge points and encourage people to do it in that sense. Both of those will get quite complicated for something that at this stage we don't know what the level of demand will be, particularly when we understand what the costs of it will be. In terms of funding, the proposed option is for full cost recovery. So there wouldn't be any subsidy from the council for people implementing the cross curb charging. And we'll develop a monitoring and evaluation plan to determine how successful the trial was. We're suggesting to run it for at least 12 months, but could extend it a further 6 months. And timescale for delivery, we'll be looking at the first installations early in the new year, so January 2026 time.
Thanks, Adam. And in the paper, we've kind of set out the options that are recommended, but we've made it very, very clear what the other options were. And if people did want to advocate for any other option, then I'm really happy to hear that. Does anyone have first, or should we do questions to officers first and then comments? So I've got Rob, then Tom, then Nick, and then David.
Okay, got a lot of questions coming. Thanks, Chair. You sort of have a figure of 28,700 households who could utilise the gullies, or whatever you call them, the cross-pavement charging. And you've given those three criteria of car ownership, household income and propensity for cross-pavement charging. That's based on GIS analysis. What are the actual physical requirements to install them? Does people have to have a front garden or yard, or can they be installed on terrace streets without front gardens? It doesn't make any difference if they've not got a front garden, does it?
We're still working through the criteria of actually where can you put these? I mean, if someone's got a driveway, do we take that? Do we allow them to have also a cross pavement when they've got a driveway? You know, if there's double yellow lines outside the front of your property, if there's a tree and you're going to put it through through tree routes. So there's lots of scenarios which officers need to, and criteria we need to consider yet before we can actually go and say where these can be installed and where they can't be installed.
And the second question is just whether there's the expression of interest portal, which is one of the first things happens, that could go live pretty soon, right? So you could be, after this committee or quite soon, you could start having expressions of interest in people who want to potentially do this. Is that the case? Is it quite soon, or is it? I know you don't like putting dates on things, but it's really important, I think, that people promote it to people so that they actually show that they're interested, if they are genuinely interested, because otherwise, how are they going to find out about it? How are they going to, know that this is an option potentially soon?
Yeah, so we're proposing to make that live in the first couple of months of the trial. We have got a lot going on. We're aiming to get it done in a 6-month period. So that would be the first thing to happen. Exactly when that happens, we'll have to take away and confirm.
So you might say that.
Tom.
Thank you. And certainly sounds like local authority owns option. Sounds like a good route to go down. My first question was about the local development orders. You talk about how you're going to look at that during the trial to determine whether that's the route that you should go down. What's that going to look like? How are you going to consider it? What's the timelines? How many are you going to wait for? X number of installations before you decide to go down that route? Which we're keen to understand a bit more detail.
So that's in terms of whether we would make it easier so you don't have to get planning applications. Yeah, I think it's understanding how many people are actually going to do this. So I think one of the examples I've been given is Manchester have had this for a while. I think it's Manchester, and they've had sort of 50 applications. So it will depend on the numbers as to whether we want to go to that extent of enabling it. If there's lots of interest, then it would make sense to do it, because obviously it would reduce impact on the planning team and reduce impact on residents as well.
Okay.
I couldn't say exactly how many we would say as a judging line. We want to get a feel for it first.
I think we also need to understand if it becomes a bit of a blocker, or if it's and something that really will help roll these out at pace or not.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where you land with that as you come to grips with it, and just at what point you decide, right, you've got enough data. But I take the point on proportionality. My second question was really about noting you prefer like a first come first served prioritisation. I was obviously looking at the heat map for potential demand across the city. Is how to ensure that we don't end up then with just one concentration, say in one location. How will we manage that if we take a first come first served approach? Apologies if the answer is obvious to that.
I think there will be more interest in certain areas. Some parts of the city there's lots of driveways, other parts of the city there isn't. There's lots of terraced housing and stuff. So you are going to get concentration in some areas. Obviously, it's only of more interest to people that have electric cars as well. What we didn't want to do was create something prescriptive that would make it very difficult to enable people to apply. As you say, we've seen trials in other areas not having huge amounts of take up. If we say you can only do it in this area, we'll only take 10 in that area, it starts to really restrict how much information we'll get from the trial. If it starts to all be in one area, if that's where all the applications are coming from, that's where all the applications are coming from. I think if we're getting, loads and loads of applications, we'll try and spread it out across the city because we want to get an idea of how it impacts. So we will try and manage that within the trial, but yeah, we need to see how many we're going to get to start with.
Thanks. I think it's worth emphasising we're sort of breaking new ground here, so there's quite a lot to learn, and I think that's why 12 to 18 month trial is exactly the way to go about this. Nick.
Thanks. I wanted to pick up on the same point about planning permission. Putting a channel in a pavement sounds a lot like permitted development if it's the statutory undertaker, i.e. the council doing it. And it seems like every single application is going to be exactly the same. So if we can't get a local development order out, then perhaps we could get standardised drawings, because I assume that every channel will be identical because we're doing them to a certain level of quality and safety. And with that in mind, our planning team probably won't need to consider the effects on traffic, because they'll all be going to parking spaces effects on pedestrian safety, because if we're installing the channel, it must be safe, and the effects on the environment, because we're just cutting through tarmac. I think this is the thing that could hold things up, because our own planning department is in special measures and it is not turning around even minor applications in the time that we need, when we're saying that it's going to be a 3-month period from application into first construction. So I strongly recommend the local development order approach.
Kind of wasn't a question, but okay. Point taken. David, then Emma.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions or thoughts. You can actually already go and look at gullies installed across pavements in a new development in Lockleys in the Bonington Walk development. Can we actually get feedback from those residents for those gullies that are installed as part of this scheme? Because I think that their contributions might well be worth it. Possibly in a look to include gullies as part of an SPD or something like that for new developments might well be worth it.
Yeah, I can ask the team to look at that. So I said in Bonington Walk development.
Thank you. The other question I have is about whether residents would be allowed to have a gully through paving slabs. For instance, I have pennant paving slabs right outside my house, and I don't think we really want to cut those up to put a electric EV gully through. So I just wondered what the status of that might be, please.
That's again part of the criteria, which is why we're working through and thinking about it very carefully, because if it's in a conservation area, special paving, but there is a lot of pennant paving across the city, so then and they are in Victorian areas where they generally have drives, so it could be quite a difficult question, but like I said, we are working through the criteria to make sure that we cover, and it will be a developing thing. I will say, I don't think, even with the best will in the world of officers and their professional, that we will get it right first time. So it will need to be something which will need to be constantly reviewed and updated as occasions occur, if you see what I mean, and we get challenges on those sorts of aspects.
Thank you, Sean. That's really useful. I'd like to note that I don't actually live in a conservation area, just a normal bit of Bristol.
I think one of the things we may need to look at is the different solutions on the market and whether or not there's ones that are maybe more suitable for pennant stone or conservation. That's, we've got a bit of work to do, haven't we, here? Emma, and then Kaz is coming in as well. Did you put your hand up as well, Don? Okay.
Thank you. So on the page 2 of the report, under limitations, it says only available to households who can access on-street parking adjacent to their homes. And if we're thinking about mainly Victorian terraces, that to me seems like a massive limitation in Bristol, because obviously even with places where there is residence parking zones, people don't have allocated spots. It's quite, every person for themselves, even with those residents. So I'm just wondering, is there, I mean, that seems to sort of dramatically sort of cut down who would be eligible for this trial in the first place. Or going forward, is there a piece of work that then works with, say, the parking and curbside strategy that we're developing to sort of do a bit more holistic, joined up, to make sure that, because I think EV are an important part going forward of decarbonising. As people, some people are going to give up their cars or share cars, and there's car clubs. But yeah, I'm just worried that that's like an impossible ask in the areas where people are going to really want them.
Yeah, I get your point, but the reality is, one thing which hasn't been mentioned yet is there's also electricity regulation safety.
Yeah.
And we can't have trailing cables going 20 yards up roads for electrical safety as well as trip hazards. So yes, they will need to be able to charge just outside their properties. One of the criteria we're seriously thinking has to be in there. The reality of that is, yes, for places where they're highly dense parking, you people might not think it's attractive, and they may have to use the community charging or your Tesco's charging point or whatever, as people tend to do now. The reality is the highway is there for everyone's use, and you cannot designate parking outside your house to a property. It has to be for repass and pass of general public.
I think the report makes it clear that you'll have to sign up to something to say that you accept that you don't necessarily own that space.
Yeah.
I think your point about sharing economy is a really
Yeah.
good one, and there are, I believe there's actually apps where you can kind of share private charging
That
points.
was my follow-up, which was more of a statement than a question. But yeah, I mean, it uses Oxford here as an example of where this has worked. In Oxford, they're making some really good progress with things like car sharing clubs, not just like co-wheels and the electric ones, but actually, you know, people who live in a street together sharing cars, you know, anything to reduce the number of cars, but sort of like community car sharing schemes. This sounds like something that would be really beneficial. So, you know, one person has the charger, but maybe 4 or 5 cars can charge from it. Would that be something that you could maybe look into or to as an incentive or as part of the scheme?
So, I mean, car clubs are one thing. I think what you're talking about is, I guess, someone would have the charger and people would pay to use their charger, I suppose.
Yeah,
they could do that. Yeah, it's like subletting a charger, couldn't you?
Pooling it, you know, having
Yeah.
like a community, a bit more of a community scheme in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's something we would get involved in, whether we could encourage. I mean, it feels like a commercial opportunity for someone to develop an app or something. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, how do you work out the energy consumption?
People do.
I mean, it sounds like it would be a useful thing. I was just going to highlight as well that obviously we've got the levy money and the green recovery money to develop local charging in residential areas as well, to help those people that can't have it directly out their houses, as well as the kind of approach that you'll get in petrol stations as well.
Great, thank you.
That shared app is a slightly more hopeful vision of the future than every person from themselves, which is, I think, what you said at the beginning. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'd like to think that's something. Kaz?
Yeah, my question was a fairly straightforward one. On page 36, you've got different solutions. Will we be trialling more than one solution in this trial? And I also wanted to just, very interesting, this paper that there's so many, 15% of all households may be looking for this. And I don't have an EV myself, so domestic electricity, you can get it half price sometimes, free sometimes, and it goes back to the sort of subletting issue. This is just a point. This is a kind of a bigger EV strategy for the city that we need to be working on. But my specific question is about the actual solutions you're looking at in the trial.
I think I'm going to give a go at answering the question, and Sean can correct me if I get it wrong. The second question is yes, there is a bigger EV strategy coming. The first question, on page 32, it says engagement with suppliers and pre-approval of suppliers. So I think there's a job to do I don't think we can guarantee that there's going to be more than one solution, but we are going to engage with a variety of suppliers. Don?
It's just to say, obviously, we'll take into account the pros and cons of all. So we'll basically do a beauty contest with the suppliers to find out, how does it work with disabled and all those sorts of things, inequalities, and as well as installation, cost, all those things will be taken into account.
Thanks. Yeah, you're right. This has been filling the inbox for many years, and some very persistent advocates for the scheme, shall we put it like that. So it's good that the government has recently brought out some guidance, which is something that, in a sense, we've been backwards and forwards on this for a number of years, and it's good now that we have some guidance anyway. I think it'd be worth briefing councillors fairly early on, or as it's launched, because it's a contentious area, isn't it? Parking spaces. So, I think it would be good that they're just familiar with what is and isn't allowed and is being done, so that they can just be aware of that, and we can handle things as it goes on, and hopefully make a success of it. It's not a silver bullet, but it's part of this. It's part of the solution, isn't it? So hopefully.
Yeah, more than happy to see if we can accommodate an all-member briefing Once we've finalised the criteria and got this a little bit further down the road, should we say later on in the year, I think that's probably a good idea, Don, because as you say, parking is quite an emotive subject outside people's houses.
Yeah, the idea of a disabled parking space being a courtesy space on the road, you know, it sort of works and it sort of doesn't, you know. The fact that it's there means that people feel other people shouldn't use it, but in reality there's not a lot you can do when they do, and that's a difficult thing for a councillor to communicate sometimes. And I can see we'll be a little bit in this situation here, but also with a lot of money at stake potentially, because if you've got a choice between free charging at night with Octopus and going to the council charger, there's quite a lot of money involved there.
I think that's exactly why a 12 to 18 month trial is what we need. We are going to now add an H to the list in paragraph 48, which is brief councillors. Well, any other contributions? Rob, coming back again.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through the sort of differences between the public charging infrastructure and this, which is effectively private charging infrastructure that we're allowing in the public realm. Is it not the case that really they are just two separate regimes and they don't really interact that much? Is it fair to say? Because basically you can't assess demand and need about public charging infrastructure in the same way you can for private infrastructure, it seems to me. Maybe you can, but it doesn't seem from the papers that it's clear what effect it will have if we do this and do it even for a short period on the public infrastructure.
We've committed to developing a monitoring and evaluation plan in months 1 to 3. I think we'll have to overlay that against any monitoring and evaluation plan of the public charges we're currently rolling out.
Yeah, I mean, but also I would say it isn't very clear at the moment. It's a very evolving market. You know, you get faster and faster charge times at petrol stations through fast chargers, but they're more expensive. People have the range anxiety and want to ensure their car is charged, which means they want a charging point at home. There's a whole load of factors that play into how people want to interact with electric vehicles. So I think, yeah, it is a bit unclear, and that's part of the reason for doing a trial is hopefully we get more clarity on it. You know, the technology is evolving all the time. So.
Just want to make one more point, if that's okay. Sorry. It's about, there's a section of the report that talks about commitment to install and installation. I really think it's important that people are only required to be committed to install it, not install it, because otherwise you're asking people to do sort of upfront investment before they have a guarantee that they'll actually be able to install the thing. Assume that's built into all this, is that it will be, I have researched a quote for this, or whatever it is you've got to do, but you'll be installing it. But I'm a bit unclear what that means, whether it is actually commit to install or install. Do you see what I mean or not?
Should we?
I think a bit too in detail?
I think that's something that needs to come back to a councillor briefing.
Sorry. Okay.
I think the team need a bit of time to do some work. I mean, to be fair, this is something that wasn't on the agenda fairly recently. We've deployed officers to work up something. We've now got some options. So I'm going to just run us through them now, which is, I think I haven't heard anyone disagree that it should be council-owned, full cost recovery, trigger review at 100, 200 and 500, first come, first served, citywide, and review in 12 to 18 months. So as far as I'm concerned, we did outline other options in the paper. No one's wanting to push those forward. So I am going to remind ourselves that this is to approve the principle of a trial of cross-pavement parking as outlined in the report, delegate responsibility for delivering the trial and all the contractual stuff to the Executive Director for Growth in consultation with the Policy Chair, and I'm going to move the report recommendations. Would anyone like to second this? Kaz. Please could you all vote for the recommendations by raising your hand? I'm not going to read out everyone's name because that's carried unanimously. Let's move to agenda item 8, which is re-procurement of the parking management permit system. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to procure and award a contract for a digital parking permit system. It's a key decision because it involves over £500,000, and I'm asking Sean. I'm not going to interject this time. I'm just going to go straight to Sean and introduce and outline the report.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so obviously we have a digital system in the background which to deliver permits for residence parking, various digital permits, even using it for CAS. Basically, we need to re-procure that system because the contract's coming to an end. So we want to take a full procurement process. Obviously, we've set out that we would like to do it for 5 + 2 + 2 + 1 because that gives us the option to remove ourselves from the contract if it's not delivering, or should we say the landscape changes for us at midpoint through the period. Obviously, it's quite a big thing to go from one system to the other, so we do need the time to re-procure it. Obviously, there would be quite a reputational damage to the authority if we didn't have a system in place where we were able to send out permits to residents in resident parking areas, and obviously with the potential further residence parking areas coming up in the city in the future, this system is key to making that happen and being able to deliver it. So basically the recommendation is to contract value of 1.2 million, and that allows us some growth into the future for the future RPSs potentially. And the recommendations are to authorise the Executive Director in consultation with the Chair to undertake all steps to deliver the digital parking system.
Any comments or questions? Emma.
Thank you. I've got one question. Although this isn't something that's come to committee yet, one of the things that is often floated around when talking about residence parking zones and in how they're managed in the future is looking at things like emission-based, weight-based, especially if people have got very wide cars that block roads and things, to discourage having overlarge cars. Would that be something that you could maybe would be looking at when procuring? Is something that might in the future have a bit of flexibility around different vehicle types?
Certainly, we can ensure that the contracts, we tend to write our contracts in quite a flexible way to make sure that we can pick up, because we don't have a crystal ball to say what's going to be here in 5-7 years time.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, we will ensure that there is an option to add various different types of permits to the system going forward.
Thank you.
The answer is probably obvious to this one as well. But just in terms of that growth that it can absorb, in terms of, say, new RPS schemes, if the entire city was to have RPS schemes, it could absorb the capacity to that point. If it is, I'm not saying that will happen, but I just want to understand you like the scalability of it. It's just as scalable as you need it to be.
Careful you don't get the journalists running away with the quote there, Tom.
Have word with him after.
I believe in the report we've set out, we've added quite a bit of contingency in, as I think the existing costs are about 4,000 a month at the moment. You know, we're saying 1.2 million over 10 years. That's quite a lot of contingency into that cost. And with any procurement, also, if you're delivering the same services, you can actually come back and get a further decision to extend the value of the contract if it's delivering within the same criteria, if you see what I mean. So whilst that's there would be an extra 50% available to us if the need required it. So I think we're quite comfortable with the request as it stands.
Question, Kaz, then Rob.
Can I just check something? The contract is up to 1.2 million. Is that what we're spending on this system? And we're hoping to get the money back by a growth to £100,000 a year with a 20% contingency over 10 years.
So the permit system's completely self-funding. So whilst we've got to pay for the company to send out the permits through the digital system, the money we receive back from the cost of the permits pays for the permit system. So actually, whilst we've got a contract there, it doesn't actually cost the city any money.
And you remember when we voted through, after quite a bit of debate, the fees for residents parking, it was on the basis that it covers all the costs. Rob?
It's just a small thing. I was surprised to note that St George West was listed in the wards at the top of this report, but then it was brought to my attention it's probably because the public car parks in St George West, we don't have residents parking in my ward, but presumably that's just because there's public car parks there and you use the same permit system for that. Okay, that's fine. If you made a mistake, that's fine. Everyone does them.
I'm going to move the report recommendations that to authorise the Executive Director to take all the steps required to procure and award a new digital parking permit system for 5+2+2+1 years in line with the procurement routes and invoke any subsequent extensions, variations and so on. Would anyone like to second that? Thank you, Emma. Shall we have a show of hands? So please put your hand up, and I'm taking that as unanimous. I'm not going to read out everyone's names, and I'd like to thank Sarah. The fact that there's very few questions on this shows that it was a very good report, and thank you for staying on tonight. Right, so let's move on. This one, well, this one's quite something, isn't it? So this one is agenda item 9, the critical assets Harbour, Newcart River and Feeder Canal River Walls asset stabilisation and ongoing remedial stabilisation works. The purpose of the report is to note progress to date, remaining programmes, current immediate works required, revised ongoing project risk and further new asset conditions findings. To note that the new revised estimate capital funding requirements to fully stabilise the critical Newcart Oh, no, we're back. Oh, we're not going to take a comfort break, but we are going to take a comfort break at the end of this. So there's your incentive to power through this particular agenda item. And just for everyone to know that I've got 20 minutes put aside for this agenda item, so maybe that helps us. So I think I've more or less outlined the purpose of the report. There's some quite shocking reading in here, and I don't know if anyone watched the video of actually some of the assets as taken by our very own team with the drone footage, which are really excellent and really, I think, really painted 1,000 words. That this report also is at least 1,000 words, isn't it? So, Sean, would you like to introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As said, this to come back with an update. As you know, we previously attended to, due to the emergency at York Road. That was obviously quite a fluid and mobile situation. Obviously, we've come to a point now where we know pretty much what we're doing because of the situation, the ground investigations and everything else with the guys on site. That made us realise very quickly that the funding wasn't there, and as the report sets out, we've agreed previous funding, but unfortunately there wasn't the funding available. So this is to basically, the report is setting out where we're up to, highlighting further high critical risks within the Newcart walls. I will say the team are keeping monitoring this, so we are looking at this. And hence why we've also asked for funding for the gateway, which is already collapsed into the river and is encroaching back towards Cumberland Road. And whilst we're there, it makes sense to do the Joel Ferry ramp at the same time because we're in the same location. There's also an added 1.5, just over 1.5 million funding for us to carry on with those investigations, because the investigations have outlined 3 other walls which were not picked up in the original report, which are actually in a critical condition as well. So the purpose of the report is to approve the spend, which has been secured by finance through strategic sale. £1 million of maintenance funding, which was on hold, will be released, and I need to find the rest of it in my budgets, which is obviously something I need to do as an emergency on the city. So we are looking at funding options for the bigger, wider issue as it emerges, and there's a lot of conversations happening about how we can take that forward and look for other funding streams, because it is a citywide issue, but I think it's more of a regional issue, and we need to escalate it regionally and probably nationally as well.
Thanks, Sean. I mean, I think we did take a risk, didn't we, of putting all this information out without actually the funding in place. But I think it's the right thing to do, because I think it's demonstrating that we know what's going on, that we are going to take it seriously, and it helps us hopefully convince anyone that can help, such as WECA or the Department for Transport. And I think they've announced a big infrastructure fund to manage assets to bid for later this year. So I think this is the right decision to actually put this out in the public domain and make sure that people know what the state is, and start setting out our case early.
Yeah, there's some funding came out from the DFT, £1 billion for structures funding, which we will be obviously looking towards. And also we're looking obviously at all things TCR funding, but also we've set up a PMO team to help us with a mandate to look to see what we can do in relation to funding across the piece. So there is active work going on to try and address the issue. So we just wanted to highlight the issue here, hopefully get approval for the further funding so we can continue to finish York Road and get on with the gateway, and further investigations to more inform the team on where we need to move to next.
So far I've seen hands from Rob, Don, Nick, and not Rob, Don, Nick, and Graham. Don.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously the long-term situation is very concerning. Short-term, are you asking us to approve 8 million of funding, because most of that is actually strategic SIL? So are we approving that in this committee? Are we entitled to approve a strategic SIL in this committee?
My understanding is that the strategic SIL is available to this work. We're already using strategic SIL funding for the existing funding. So it's just an extension of the existing approvals for strategic SIL to be used on this work.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I mean, there's a governance situation there, isn't there? If we're not clear who is able to allocate from the strategic SIL pot £7 million, which committee does that?
My understanding is that this committee or other committees can make funding decisions in relation to strategic SIL.
Can we make any other? Can we allocate any more of it then, or?
I would suggest that there is a paper first, perhaps.
Okay. Well, that brings me to my second point, because there's obviously a decision being made here regarding the division between strategic SIL and highways money that goes into that. I think that's a very political decision, isn't it? Because that £1 million from highways, there are many, many things that Sean could have used that for and possibly would have liked to have done. So who decided at a political level that that £1 million would come out of highways? To arguably there is a legal case that highways take some responsibility for this, but in reality these are citywide regional assets which should be funded in other ways, which are being explored. But I'm concerned that this division between strategic SIL and highways is going to continue year after year after year, and it's actually going to bleed at you know, we're going to talk about road safety maybe later,
Okay. Don, we're faced with a situation where we're on site now. We need to do something. We've managed to get the finance business partner and the team to work together a funding package to make sure that we get the best value for money and continue the momentum. Otherwise, it would potentially cost us a lot more. I take your point that we probably need, when we're taking another paper like this, to be a little bit more clear about the governance. But I'm not going to make any apologies right now for the fact that we're on site and this was critical and we need to keep the momentum up. And if we didn't do it, then demobilising and then worrying about this would not have been the best or the most cost-effective option.
No. We're on site and we have to do it. But I'm saying that the financial things are separate from that. Who is paying for this? And what the consequences of £1 million coming from the highways budget, and maybe that division between strategic SIL, which, as far as I can see, we're not qualified to allocate here. If we are, then that's the consequences of that in terms of the council governance are quite frightening, really. But anyway, given that we're just about to allocate 7-point-something million of strategic SIL, the 1 million and that division are something that need to be decided at a political level. It's come to us here now, presented, but I don't think we should assume that we're happy with that division and ongoing because of the implications for road safety and for the general repair of our highways in future.
I take your point. I refer you to the finance business partner's advice to this committee and the fact that this committee is authorised webcast this. There was one about 10 minutes ago, and it peaked at 26 sometime earlier, probably during the public forum. So we're on 0 at the moment, but all the same, they may just have logged on and they may be able to hear us. Let's hope we can continue. There is no constitutional reason why we need to have the sound or the sound on the webcast, and we've got some important decisions to make. We were just at the point where Sean was about to explain some of the finances to Don, so I'm going to let that happen.
Hi, just to clarify, the actual £1 million is not in my budget as it stands at the moment, so it will have no effect to any of our plans or the intentions of the maintenance work this coming year. It was proposed, but it was not approved. So it's there in the budget, as it were, but it's not actually been allocated into my budgets. So it has zero effect to the maintenance programme of this year, apart from the £100,000, which in relation to my budgets is not a huge impact when you consider the amount of budgets I'm having to deal with to repair the bridges and the walls and the roads and everything else.
And I think what we're also saying in this is that we need to find the money corporately for the next 5 years to cover this. And this is a corporate problem, and I think you're right, Don, that we don't want to see detriment to highways. The statutory duty on us is not necessarily to maintain the new cut. It is specifically to make sure that there's roads and the new cut walls do actually hold up the roads. So it is the statutory duty on the council is a highways-based duty. This money has come corporately. This committee has the ability to allocate that money corporately, and we are making the case for corporate funding for the next 5 years. We're also setting out our stall for the infrastructure fund and the structures fund, that the £1 billion that national government has made available. And I will start to make the case at WECA that we need to the maintenance regime that we at the moment is simply passported by WECA to us, and the main allocations are based on square meterage of highway. And I think we need to get a bit more sophisticated in the way that if that's we're getting devolution, and if we have the ability to recognise that some roads are harder working than others, and particularly those which involve a lot of starting and stopping because of the congestion we suffer in Bristol, which then works the roads even harder, that we should probably move away to a needs-based rather than a formula and square meterage based highways maintenance regime across the west of England as well. So I'm hoping that's addressing some of your concerns, Dom.
Some, I mean, I agree with you on your final point. I think sometimes because we've got the technical ability to do things, we end up picking up the bill for them. And actually, this could have just as easily have come to the Environment Committee as to the Highways Committee. So for this year, I accept that this isn't coming off of our current highways projects. It was obviously £1 million that could ultimately have been allocated to highways, because it was. We have done that. So I'm concerned that this division is not something that we accept as being an ongoing situation for the ongoing repairs of the new cut. There should be a political discussion as to who carries that.
And I think there's one of the reasons that we have made the whole report available rather than just the immediate need to avoid demobilisation is specifically so that this can be in the public domain. And as we prepare our budgets for the next 5 years, this is setting out a stall for something that we think is necessary for the next 5 years, whatever the funding source. But certainly that's, I think, a corporate discussion.
And my concern is to defend officers in highways, the Highways Authority.
until we actually get on site and actually start doing the work itself, it is very volatile in relation to what we actually have to do.
You might want to use your microphones now. Overspent on allocations, but not necessarily on the actual project itself, because the project has changed. So I think we need to find a form of words which kind of explains that in the best way we can. I feel completely. It seems really unfair that mine works and nobody else does. So I'm not going to. I seem to have one. Has anyone else got one? Because I'm not going to be the only person talking. Notice just that
in an environment where that money is not widely available, because whatever schemes we're bringing in, one hopes that any future RPS schemes will be a little more income generating than perhaps you've advocated for, Ed, in the past. And people will then see that this money is going to good causes, as well as shaping the way we do transport in the city as well.
Thanks, Don. Nick was next, and then he can pass the mic back to Kaz and then Emma.
Thank you. No issue with this paper, which seems to be ratifying the decisions of the area committees, which is good. But Adam teased us with the idea that we might do things differently in future years, which I think is a very good idea. That the local transport schemes are the things that really matter to people, and it's a way of demonstrating that the council does deliver on their priorities at neighbourhood level. And I think, although we don't do business cases for each of them, that there is generally a good return on this kind of small investment that is more widely appreciated. So in future years, I'd like us not to just be relying on SIL returns, which is a bit of a lottery based on development, but putting a little bit of our corporate cash into local transport schemes, maybe even getting that from the region or national government, but really bulk up our ability to deliver on what matters to people at a local level.
I certainly note that this committee would like to see a kind of pot for smaller schemes as part of TCR in the future, which is something we've discussed offline, and something that I'll be making sure that the WECA are aware of that when they're thinking about the allocation of TCR. I'm going to go to Kaz next, and then Emma and Rob, and David.
Mine was just a very quick question on one of the items, 26-27 allocation for 20-mile-an-hour zones. I know you put out a kind of call for those, and you got $500,000 for that. Is that kind of reflective of what we're expecting? And any idea where that $500,000 will come from? Will that come from CAS as well?
So we've put a fair bit of contingency into these budgets to make sure there's sufficient money to deliver them. So with 20-mile-an-hour schemes, we don't know yet what the size of the ask might be. So there is quite a lot of money there to enable delivery of the schemes. If it's lower, the money can go back into the pot. That money, as it's shown as a shortfall, will be coming from the CAS allocation. So if we don't spend it, it will just remain within the CAS allocation.
And I, for one, would like, as you know, we're thinking of doing a task and finish group on road safety. I think that would be looking at the 20-mile-an-hour requests, and possibly, if there's any money left, we'd be looking to see whether or not this committee would agree that we might want to change some other speed limits in the city. Not just 30 to 20. So I think it was Emma, Rob, then David.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Nick did nearly entirely make my point, but thank you. Just to, this is great. What it doesn't show on this list I'm looking at on page 288 is just these projects that have been, completed and will be completed because of this. Some of them go back so many years. There was a joke with Councillor Martin Fodor that I think they went for a crossing on is it Cranbrook Road, because a child got knocked over and that child is now in university and it's finally been done. So this is really good. And yeah, just to echo what's been said, I think anything that works with local ward councillors and those area committees, which is ultimately working for residents and those really specific ward-specific issues, where those hotspots are, where those dangerous roads are, where those school routes are, where those traffic calming measures are needed. I think it's such a useful work. It's worth so much of our time. We do often focus on the big strategic projects, which obviously are wonderful and needed. But I think there's potential here for us to get back out into the smaller areas where people have been lobbying their councillors and area committees for many years to get things done. That will make such a huge difference to those areas. So yeah, I really welcome that, whether that's through task and finish groups, whether that's through finding a bit more money or any other pots. I think that's a really good direction for this committee to go in at some point.
And picking up on the point, I think the £300,000 in there is to support local communities identifying effective solutions to the problems that they've brought, rather than the local communities coming with the problem and the solution. I think we're trying to move to a situation where they come with a problem and then we work out the best solution using the highways expertise, and there's a funding line for the first time ever in here to do that.
Yeah, so that's part of the revised approach, is to say, bring us your issues, and we will then say, these are the sort of things that will resolve those issues, and through doing that, hopefully get more value from the money by saying we can combine different schemes and do more. That 300,000 is essentially design money to start doing that work, interacting with the area committees and generating the schemes. But behind all of this as well is the additional resource that we've got, and the bigger focus on the teams, which enables us to then start bringing these forward. So yeah, I think it's very positive. I'm looking at the team. It feels much more positive as well, and like we're starting to resolve some of the issues and move forwards now. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, just a couple of points. Firstly, I was at a community meeting in St George recently, in May I think, and people were bringing up route finding and how to get to certain places, walking, cycling, that kind of thing. So it's really good to see that there is a scheme here, the audit of key city cycle route wayfinding. Say that with your teeth in. Which is coming forward, so that's really good just to say that. And the second thing is, I just wonder whether in future we could put a little bit more description in some of these, because although I half know what some of these schemes are, it would just perhaps be a little bit more helpful to have a little bit more on what each of the schemes is. Unless I've missed a document that relates to all these schemes, I'd quite like to look at these schemes and see what they entail, or is that all in area committee papers? So basically, I just need to go and look at all the area committee.
Well, actually, there was I think twice a year we produce a report on all of these local schemes and how they're going. So, and I think that's shared with all area committees. So I think you have missed something, actually, Rob.
Okay, thanks.
With all due respect. Just David first, then Don, and then Tom.
So I, like Rob, have a question about a particular item on that spreadsheet. It's the casualty reduction programme. What does that actually involve, and is its aims aligned to the full council motion about trying to achieve Vision Zero within Bristol, please?
Yeah, so the casualty reduction programme is an annual programme that we have for road safety schemes. Historically, our focus has been on picking specific problem areas and doing schemes. The team are going to be moving much more towards influencing projects and more kind of strategic views on road safety, so that we can get closer to that the Vision Zero objective. Because if you just do road safety by picking hotspots, you'll be there forever. And actually, what we need to do is for all projects to be doing more on road safety, so that it's embedded into everything we do. That said, we still need some money, because we can't rely on every kind of major project to be doing that work for us. So there is some money in there to carry on that programme of works and implement improvements where we need to.
Yeah, in terms of the future direction, we've got some excellent data on the website where people can have been able for years. James's platform that he developed for where people can report road safety concerns. After a few years, it's become very, very comprehensive, and I think we ought to give a lot of weight to that. Obviously, the traditional neighbourhood partnership approach, you tend to get the usual people who've got time and feel they have influence within the community. Sometimes, and strong relationships to a local councillor. It's democratic in a certain way of doing democracy, let's put it. That's probably the best way to characterise it. But I think we should give strong weighting towards the evidence that we have.
I think that's really true, and I think often road safety is dampened. You don't get casualties because of the intimidation effect, and people there's a desire line, or there's something that people want to do, but they don't feel able to do it because it's so dangerous. And I think we need to be thinking not just about where collisions and crashes have happened, but places where it's too intimidating, and I think that is an excellent platform for picking up on those ideas.
If we look at the age range and other characteristics of the demographic of the people who come to those kind of evening meetings, it's not a great basis to get a picture of what's going on the streets of our. No children would be represented or anything like that. They don't vote, and some people wouldn't want them to be, you know. So
thanks, Tom.
Very careful.
I think Tom was next, and Emma. Okay.
Just briefly, obviously, really welcome. This is going to almost like wipe the slate clean, isn't it? In terms of then new schemes being able to come forward through the area committees. And I think one of the things I was just reflecting on, I don't see an answer now, but good to be pick up is I have a hospital in the middle of the ward I represent, and that massively affects the types of road safety schemes and transport schemes you can bring forward. And so it'd be really useful to have a bit of a better understanding what can be done on blue light routes, because we're getting requests about that from residents, and have written to your team about it.
Yeah, sure. We can look into that. I mean, there are obviously different types of interventions that we can make, which are more acceptable to those sort of routes. And you know, thinking about that area as well, there's other things where we can start to get benefits from. So we talked about RPS earlier, for example, which would pick up some of the lining issues that people have. You know, some of the major projects can pick up some of the smaller issues, and then we can have that bigger focus on the key things that local residents have. And a large part of this is having the resource, particularly for road safety, but also for the area teams to get involved in those other projects and get the influence in as well.
I think we need to catch up first, and then we'll see where we get to. But I think that's a good challenge for us to think about how we make sure we spend this or invest this equitably. I am going to move this, that this committee approves the 25-26 and 26-27 local transport programme delivery plans, the drawdown of the money from SIL, and all the usual delegations. Director. Do I have a seconder? Rob. Okay, well, I'll share it out next time. So who would like to vote in favour of this recommendation? Show your hands now. That's carried unanimously. Let's move on. Next is agenda item 11, A38S M1 Metrobus extension and active travel corridor. And the purpose of this report is to seek approval for the submission of a low-risk transport scheme full business case to the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority for CRSTS funding, and subject to approval to accept and invest the funding to deliver the Metrobus extension and active travel corridor. It's a key decision report as it relates to over 500,000, and if I'm right, it was this committee about a year ago that approved going to consultation and engagement on this. So, Adam, is there anything you wanted to say about this? Many of us will remember it because we've already approved the initial the development of the FPC.
Yes, so it's submitting the FBC to WECA. This is a CRSTS funded project, a bus route and associated segregated cycle route. Most of the money is on the cycle route infrastructure. There's a small portion which is for the bus stop upgrades. And what we're doing is putting in the ability then for the buses to extend into Imperial Park and connecting up with a cycle route. So the budget is £4 million for delivery, and expect to complete around September 2026.
Any questions? Nick?
Our officers know that they're going to be given a hard time by difficult councillors over money, because that means that you can give a hard time to your staff and contractors for the same reason. So this is a threat to be passed down, but it's an expensive scheme. £4 million. That pays for 6 bus stops and 630 metres of cycle path. So I did a little bit of maths on the figures in the paper. That comes in at about £2,000 to £3,000 a square metre, which is the same price that you can build a house for. So it does seem to be an awful lot for what we're getting. So I'd like us to continue to drive down prices wherever we can. The question I have on it is, why does the cycle path stop just south of Hartcliffe Way roundabout? So the Metrobus we're taking to the other side, to the north of the roundabout, whereas looking at the general arrangement plans, the path that we are proposing stops about 10 metres short of when it gets onto the Hartcliffe Way roundabout, and that creates an artificial pinch point that we just don't need. There's loads of room there. It would be possible for a segregated cycle lane to continue to go underneath the roundabout and join up with the segregated lane on the northern side of the roundabout. But the scheme that is proposed here has just got a completely unnecessary pinch point at the end of it.
So the point about costs, yes, we will continually challenge ourselves on that, and it's something I've, given that I have to come here and explain the costs of everything, I have been challenging with my project managers, I always do, to look at exactly what we're delivering and that we are getting value and that we are doing what we need to do, not perhaps sometimes too much. Construction work is expensive, however. In terms of the cycle route and why it ends where it ends, I can pick that detail up with the project team. I think we wouldn't propose to go through Hartcliffe roundabout because that would be a much more substantial scheme.
There's already cycling infrastructure underneath Hartcliffe roundabout designed to join up with that existing infrastructure.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is that the on each of the arms there's a decent ramp down into an underpass, and then there's semi-segregated and under-segregated paths through the underpasses and the middle of the roundabout. What I was going to hope is that some of them have got some not very nice barriers on, and that we maybe for £4 million we could get some of those barriers removed in the underpasses.
So I think that I guess that the point is that the route stops kind of just shy of the roundabout paths, which, they're there and they're perfectly reasonable. They're probably, I haven't checked, but they may well not be LTN 120 compliant. So if we wanted to extend into that area, we would probably look at a much more substantial scheme, given its subways and all sorts. So I think we've taken it to where we can to provide a link into existing routes. In future, we could come back and look at the roundabout as part of a wider scheme.
Can we take up Nick's challenge and at least look at maybe providing some paint to have an amount of segregation? If the space is there, then maybe we can do it on a paint-based basis.
An extra 10 metres of tarmac would obviate that pinch point, where you would go from completely segregated to very narrow shared pavement and then back to wide shared cycle and paving going underneath the roundabout.
Okay, is that something that we could take up, Adam? And it may be something that we can't necessarily change to take to WECA at the moment, but we could possibly change at the contract
yes,
at the moment when we could do the detailed procurement.
Yeah, we wouldn't change it as part of the FBC, but
Yep.
we could look into making alterations to the detailed design before we
So
we tender it.
Action for Adam to take that away and look and see if we can make those small adjustments, even if it's not much more than a bit of tarmac and a bit of paint. Kaz.
Very happy with this scheme. It's good that we've got the extension and the segregated cycleway, and but just a couple of minor points. I wanted to talk about the floating bus stop. And the potential conflict between pedestrians and cyclists, which I'm sure you're aware of. So maybe interested to see what your take on that is, and maybe will you make sure there's adequate signage to make sure that nobody comes into conflict, particularly cyclists maybe slow down as they approach that bus stop. And my only other very minor point, the pedestrian island just south of Briscoe Avenue, and you've put a zebra crossing in further north. Is that a natural pedestrian route, or will people actually walk up to the zebra or still try to cross the road without the pedestrian island?
So in regard to the bus stop, the floating bus stop, that is something we've been working with disability groups on. I've personally been out on site myself for a trial with
So yeah, we have been working with disability groups on those to improve the designs, to make them as accessible as possible and as safe as possible. Particularly visually impaired pedestrians can find it hard to understand where the pavement is and how they get onto it. So that's these designs are the result of those discussions. The island out, I would have to take that one away and check with the team.
It's not a detail that I'm up to speed on. My back on, I'm doubling up now, am I? Okay, but yeah, I'll take that one away.
Any other comments? Tom?
Just briefly, really good to see this coming forward. When we're bringing forward lots of homes, so it's obviously really important that we continue to make sure the infrastructure is also coming forward as well, and this will open up public transport to more people in South Bristol. So it's really welcome to see this and seeing the joy that there is coming forwards with this, and that actually we've got infrastructure that's coming ahead of a lot more homes that are coming forward in that area. So yeah, really good to see.
It's great when we get the infrastructure right before people move in, because it's more likely to nudge them into the behaviour at that moment when they're likely to be considering, there's all the evidence that you've got about a 5-week window after people move into a new house to influence their behaviour. And too often we do this on section 106 when the thing is completed, and so it's great to see this going in early. I'm going to move, I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to move this that the committee votes in favour of the that we approve the submission of the full business case, and in consultation with the chair of this committee takes all steps to get on with it. And I'm not going to read out all of that because you've all read it anyway and it's on the screen. So would anyone like to say, and also note that we have got an exemption Appendix E, and you are seconding it, David. So, would anyone, can we have a show of hands in favour of the recommendations in this report? Yes, again, carried unanimously. Having an outbreak of unanimity on this. Right, we've got, about half an hour left. So the Supported Bus Services Task and Finish Group Closure Report. The purpose of this report is to provide a closure report on the process and output of the Supported Bus Services Task and Finish Group and seek approval of the recommendations of the Task and Finish Group as detailed in the closure report. It's a non-key decision update report. Before I ask Adam just to introduce the main bits of it, I'd just like to say that I think this was an excellent piece of cross-party working through a Task and Finish Group, and I'd like to thank Tim, and it's very sad that he's not here actually to introduce and speak to it himself, because I think he did an excellent job. He certainly knows the bus network in Bristol. He did a very fair and balanced job of chairing that Task and Finish Group and actually finding some more money for us to invest. We've also managed to persuade WECA to fund the first year of this funding, extending the amount that we could invest in new supported bus services. So all round an excellent piece of work chaired by Tim, but with cross-party consensus. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say particularly, Adam.
No, not particularly. We will be releasing the updated list of what the new funding will be spent on. I'd agree it's been quite a challenge, but a pleasant challenge, and I think the team and the Task and Finish Group did a really good job of progressing it very quickly. And also the delegation to the Task and Finish Group, I think, was a very positive step as well.
Rob and Kaz and Graham.
I just wanted to give some early feedback that the number 16 bus, which obviously partly goes through my ward, has had very, I've had very strong positive feedback from people locally. So that's good news. I'm sure that there are different experiences for different people. Obviously, no bus service is perfect, but so far I've heard a lot of good stuff, so that's good.
Yeah, well, thank you for your comments, Ed, about Tim. I'm sure he was, I believe he was hoping to watch this, but he may have given up with all the tech issues. But just in case he's watching it, as he's my chief whip, I also want to say what an excellent job he did. Not just Tim, but also council officers and people from WECA as well. It was a very collegiate group across all parties. We worked at pace to get those 3 bus services in place. been working at pace now to get more ready for August. I'm really pleased that we're going to have an announcement on that soon. And it's great that we've taken CAS money to turn it into public transport improvements. I was particularly pleased that in South Bristol we were able to introduce some routes, but I know it's very painful that the discussions. So I hope the new services, when they're announced, will sort of please us as a group of councillors who worked on that task and finish group. And for me, it's particularly pleasing that I don't want to prejudge the announcement, but there may be some night buses coming along, which I called for in my motion back in November. So yeah, just to echo your comments, what a good group it was, and very happy with the report.
And I think part of making us happy is we're going to be talking about KPIs and the fact that we have a chance to influence our own KPIs and our own performance management. And what will make us really happy is if we get regular reports that shows that the buses are being well used. Graham, do you want to pass the... All right. That's great. I think it's worth also thanking the bus operators who came and all engaged with not only the discussions, the session specifically for them, but also with tendering to run the services. Tom.
It's clearly been a brilliant piece of work, and I know I'm sure all South Bristol councillors are very happy with it. Certainly the South Bristol Labour councillors are. It's one of their key asks has been to get bus routes that can connect up to Avonmouth, connecting with employment opportunities, and it's been really good to see that come forward. And so I just wanted to say that on their behalf, because I know how thrilled they were to see that come forward from the result of their lobbying.
Thanks. I'm going to... I don't know if there's, I mean, one of the things that I was very pleased to see coming through as well is that we are going to we're recommending that we start looking at Alex may not be so happy about this, but section 106 might be something that not just looks at improving bus stops, but also thinks about the possibility of funding bus services, because that's something that we haven't seen a lot of in recent years, but was quite a common thing a few years back and is still happening in some other unitary authorities not a million miles away from here. I'm going to move that we note this report, the proposed monitoring and evaluation plan, and that we approve the recommendations set out in the closure report. Does anyone want to second that? Lots of hands went up. I'm going to pick on Graham this time. Thank you, Graham. And I don't think we need a vote, do we? No. Sorry?
That's fine. It's noted.
It's just noted. So probably didn't even need it seconding either. So finance report. The purpose of this report, agenda item 13, is to present the P12 24-25 Outturn report as presented to the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee on the 19th of May 2025, with the relevant appendices that fall within the remit of this policy committee. This is a report for information, and Alex is going to take us through this report. I think it's worth saying that because I think you may be saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, that the end of year closure is such a big deal for the finance colleagues that we're not getting a bespoke report. This is just the report that came to Strategy and Resources, so it doesn't tell us a lot about transport, and that's not, and there's certainly an aspiration to make sure that we get more bespoke reports in the future. So I think that's, I just wanted to make that absolutely clear, and I hope I haven't stolen your thunder.
You have, Chair, but that's perfectly okay. So I think that's a key point. So this is effectively reflecting on last financial year, and that the council was able to deliver a balanced budget. There's some quite long reports here. This was, a full report to Strategy and Resources Committee, and there are some appendices which around the overall outturn revenue and capital and savings that you can look at the breakdown by committee if you wish. Effectively, it's that a budget was delivered, and the point you make, Chair, is that you will again see the return of committee-specific finance reports on a more regular basis from I think, from next committee.
I think the one thing I would say is that it is a little bit difficult with transport because we're split between two directorates, economy of place and management of place. And when I went through the report, every other committee is a little bit better contained, I think. Maybe not. Actually, not every other committee. Some of the committees are, but I guess you report to a number of committees and so does management of place. So it's a little bit harder for transport to see exactly what was done, so I look forward to the more bespoke report.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, in strategic transport, which is an economy of place, there's a lot of capital. In management of place, where highways and parking is, there's capital and a lot of revenue as well. So yeah, it does split across two divisions, and I'm fortunate enough just to remind you, Chair, that I report to 4 committees. So.
4, okay. Tom.
Won't repeat the points we've made about maybe a specific cover paper would have been helpful. I think the point just on balanced budget, though, I think we do need to just be a bit clear that in point 6.1 it does point out that it was the one-off distribution of retrospective business rates income of 14.9 million is the reason it balanced, and that's accrued over a number of years because we asked that to finance. So it's balanced, yes, but it's because a one-off pot of money has been distributed to fill the hole.
And if it would be remiss of me not to sort of echo the words of the Section 151 officer, the finance director, that I mean, the pressures in local government continue to be extreme and compounding, but you know, we must, across the business, always exhibit good discipline to deliver savings and manage in-year budgets, and that's the continual challenge.
I'm, well, Don.
Yeah, yeah, I think Alex's comment there is all the more reason why we need a transport report, albeit that it is across the 2 directorates. We need to present to members of the public, you know, a picture of the interrelatedness between what they pay for various things within transport and what they receive within, and because we don't want to be a draw on other parts of the council, like adult social care or send budget or anything like that. But to make that case is hard work, and it's not always appreciated. So we need the clearest evidence, as you know, the front line in terms of communicating with residents, the clearest evidence of what people are paying for and the challenges that they're putting themselves through, which I don't always like, are generating positives in other areas of transport life, but the wider society as well.
Well put. So shall we move on? We note the report and we note the fact that I think particularly by the time we get to about period 6 or period 7, we'll be wanting to monitor the transport elements of all this to make sure we're on track, and particularly see the impact of some of the changes we made to parking charges starting to come through, because they all take time to come through because of the required legal processes that happen as a result. Finally, agenda item 14, the quarterly performance report. So this is again for information. It's a non-key decision update report, and it's to brief the Transport Connectivity Committee on performance against BCC business plan as relevant to the remit of the committee, and for members to note specific areas of interest or concern with the relevant directors. And also to note that there's a process underway to refresh the corporate strategy and related KPIs. And I'm certainly hoping that we'll have some time amongst ourselves to make sure that we are measuring and managing the things that matter most to us. And I would hope that that would be a collaborative process amongst the committee to make sure that we get the best and most rounded picture that we can moving forward. And I hope you'll join me. I'm not particularly thinking that that would be of particular interest to the general public, and I hope you'll join me kind of offline to generate a report together collaboratively that we can all make sure that we're measuring and managing the right things. I've got Nick and then Emma.
The report report shows really good progress in terms of increasing sustainable methods of transport, which is great, but there's one big red flag, which is that casualties have increased by a quarter in presumably the quarter, and that's something that I think we can't just let pass, that we should look into that as a committee. I know we've talked about a task and finish group on road safety, but also we need some context, and perhaps a report brought to this committee would be a good way of doing it, to sort of answer the questions, which it sounds like we've got information on. So if there are more people being injured cycling and scooting, but does that simply reflect the fact that there are more people cycling and scooting? It's obviously a bad thing that they're hurting themselves while doing it, but that's important context for us so that we can work out where we need to focus our efforts in improving safety on the roads.
Well said. And you may remember we actually had a bit of a report on this, I think 2 committees ago, where we delved into more detail about things like per mile and so on. One of the things that came out of it was that the e-scooters are driving an increase in casualties. We also noted that the police aren't differentiating between the legal, if you like, legal DOT scooters and the illegal ones. I have taken that up with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and they have accepted that they need to improve the reporting so we can differentiate between the legal ones and the illegal ones. So I think that's hopefully some tangible progress that will give us better information to make decisions, like you say, in the future. It was Emma, then Don.
Thank you. So I'm going to combine 2 points. Firstly, very much agree with what Don said about being transparent about where money goes and what it's spent on, and having that clarity. I think with KPIs, it's another area that we can have a bit more transparency with. I think, I don't know if the public would want to see us all sat down going through our KPIs one by one. But I think, some of our public forum questions earlier was about how are you measuring this, what are you measuring there, and I think we probably could sort of do some sort of public information on those KPIs. What's working, those ones that are interesting. So maybe when we look at the KPIs, we can think about the ones that will really reassure and inform the public and what we're doing and why we're doing it.
So just to clarify, the proposal is that we have a bit of a kind of offline working group to identify which KPIs are, not to somehow not release them in public.
That might be some ones that we can share in an informative way to the public, because I think that they would find that useful.
Yeah,
because they can ask us about it.
We may need to be a little bit patient because it does take time for reporting systems to come up, and I certainly don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because quite a lot of we look at, like road safety, the most interesting information is the trend, and we really shouldn't be losing that. So we don't want to gradually evolve our KPIs and maybe some performance indicators underneath that rather than revolutionise them. Don, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, the accident figures are alarming, but we've been over these to a degree. New technology also still emerging from COVID in terms of the kind of trend as well. I think it'd be good, as Nick said, to have a more in-depth look, but I think when we need some new figures, I wouldn't really want to go over, what the 23, 24 figures again. It would be good to see what's the trend now that travel patterns are settling down post-COVID. I know it takes us ages to get these figures through for a number of reasons that we've discussed before. It would be quite good to try and speed some figures through. So we've really got something that's that adds to what we've previously discussed, I think.
We did raise with the PCC that the need for quick reporting, and that actually a lot of the blockage was at that end.
Yeah, well, hopefully those are coming through. I think you did say they were coming through more swiftly, but in terms of our own processes as well, it would be a shame to have a report that came 1 month before the new figures came out. Let's base it around new figures so there's something to get hold of. And if we're talking about a task and finish group on road safety, I mean, really we need the latest evidence to work on that.
And the trend, yeah. Kaz.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up a little detail
in public forum, there was something about the East Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood, and there was a answer to a question which said the trial started on the 14th of April, so I think it's a 6-month trial. So does that mean it ends on the 14th of October? And there's also some comments about not bringing this to September's Transport and Connectivity Committee. So will it be coming to the October one, which will be just a week after the trial ends?
No, we need time to make sure that we've got the figures, we've got time to understand them and write the report, and that's going to take time. I'll bring. We're working on a timetable pretty much as we speak, and we'll be releasing information about that. I sense that we've done this one for now, and that we've probably quite hot and suffered the heat and the technology. So I'm going to say, I'm just looking through my paperwork because. Sorry. Yeah, should we? Yes, sorry. We formally note that report, and I look forward to working with you to decide how we're going to move forward on KPIs and possibly performance indicators sitting underneath them, which may be not so key. And the reason I've been struggling is I couldn't remember what date of the next meeting is. So I'm going to thank everyone for their attendance. I'm going to thank the members of the public who've seen us through right to the bitter end. Thank officers for all their inputs. And thank members of the committee. And I'll see you all again at 5 o'clock on the 11th of September 2025, which is another double header of a week for us, with full council on the Tuesday and this committee on the Thursday. So looking forward to that already, and I wish you all a good summer holiday in the meantime.